very interesting times here in Winnipeg, and I think so much of what happens over the next few weeks could absolutely have a massive impact on what the Winnipeg Jets do at the draft, because not only are we talking about making the selections, but there's a bunch of players, Scott, that could potentially be on the move. What do you make of just the Jets situation, where they are organizationally, and how significant the moves could be made over the course of this next month?
Well, it certainly feels like they're at some kind of a tipping point one way or the other here, especially with some of the pending free agents and Wheeler and Scheifele. And obviously you've got Dubois and sort of chatter about him right around the corner. And this does feel like it may be the end of an era and the sort of dawn of a new one. And as far as that goes, I think they're actually in a fairly well position, or sort of fairly well positioned, if you will, in terms of the youth that's coming. I'm a big, but you guys know this, but I've been, since he was 16 years old, a huge believer in Cole Perfetti. I think he's going to be a point per game player in the league and a true sort of star winger. We'll see whether it happens for him at center and all of that. But no, big believer in Cole. I like Chaz a lot. Obviously, the health issues with Chaz are concerning, and they are reoccurring and different varieties now too. So that's something that he's going to have to sort of overcome. He's going to have to stay healthy and get back on track. But Brad, I mean, we were just talking before I joined on. I'm off next week to the Memorial Cup to watch Brad play, and he's had a really nice run. Has been a hugely important piece of the team that I believe are the Memorial Cup favorites in Seattle. Rutger McGroarty, strong freshman year at Michigan, and there are pieces there. That's four guys that I think could be good, solid, sort of top 9 NHL players. So that piece of it, I think, is they're in a good spot, especially for a team that's been a fairly consistent playoff team for a number of years now. Typically, you don't still have a cupboard of 4 or 5 legitimate prospects when you're in that spot. So that's a testament to drafting well. They've hit on some of those sort of mid first round picks, those late teens, early 20s picks. They've done a good job with them. I still think Billy Heinola is going to join that group and become an everyday sort of number 4, number 5 defenseman kind of thing. So there's a foundation there. If they decide to sort of really hit a hard reset button here, there are some young pieces to continue to sort of shape the next phase in their I don't want to call it a rebuild, but the sort of that next chapter for them. There are pieces to the puzzle, and they've got another pick coming up at number 18 that should add to that if they decide to hang on to it. So there's a foundation there. They're not in the position that, say, the Pittsburgh Penguins are, where once the Malkin Crosby era is over, they have not drafted well, and they have not drafted hardly at all, and there is absolutely nothing waiting in the wings to help them sort of smooth out losing some core pieces. So they're in a decent spot that way.
Scott, you just mentioned 2 players that I think are really exciting Winnipeg Jet fans, Brad Lambert and Rutger McGroarty, the 2 first-rounders from last year. And I'll add in Elias Salomonsson, who they took in the second round, that, talking with some people in Jets player development, very excited about. I mean, what can you tell us about just the last year for those 3 players from your eyes, and how they've progressed as to moving on, hopefully to become contributing NHLers?
Yeah, well, Salomonson's a really interesting one. I had a chat with one of his coaches over in Sweden last week for a different story I was doing on Axel Sandy and Pelika, and in that process just really got chatting about Salomonsson, and they just wanted to, both the folks within the organization just wanted to wax poetic. They felt that before he got injured, that he was one of their best defensemen in the SHL last year, and that the quote that he used was a good one, and I'm paraphrasing here, but he told me basically, I've seen good players become great players. I've never seen average players become great players as quickly as Salomonsson did last year, and sort of said that they didn't even have even lukewarm expectations for him. They were kind of down on him, and then he was tremendous before some injury troubles sort of got in the way of his season. So he's going to be a big part of the World Junior team on home ice in Sweden, in Gothenburg, this coming December. They're going to have a really strong blue line. That Swedish blue line from top to bottom will be impressive. It'll be the strength of that team. And I expect him to be a big part of that. So that's a nice boost. He's a kid who played really well in junior on sort of in the early years of his career, always played above his age group, was coming into his draft year believed to be sort of a true top prospect. And then didn't fall off, but became kind of that second tier, second round type prospect where he was ultimately picked, right? So for him to now regain some of that cachet and some of that status that he had prior is a really positive step for him and a positive step for the Jets pool. So there's definitely reason for optimism with Elias. As far as Brad and Rutger go, I mean, Lambert's the speed and the skill, we've all seen it. I know it wasn't consistent in the AHL, but he was put in a tough position last summer. From a conversation I had with Lambert for a Q&A that I did with him, last summer was really his first year training. He came over and stayed in Aurora, which is actually where I'm from, and trained with Gary Roberts at St. Andrews College. And it was really the foundation of him trying to sort of build something for himself. And if you've seen him, he's a pretty skinny kid. He's a tall kid, but he's a pretty skinny kid still, really athletic. But there's a lot that's still going to change about him, his body, his game. And I think just spending the second half of this year playing at the junior level, playing with his peers, getting sort of really feeling good about himself again, I think was the right thing for him. And I expect he's going to score some big goals in the Memorial Cup and be a sort of timely key contributor there. He doesn't dominate games at the WHL level in terms of every shift and all over the puck and that kind of thing, but his skill flashes 4 or 5 times a game, and it sort of opens your eyes. So that's who he is. He's going to play with speed and skill, and I think he's going to frustrate some coaches along the way. And I know he's a competitive, fiery kid too, though, and I know he wants to prove people wrong in terms of rounding out his game a little bit. So I'm really interested to see where he takes it and what kind of career he might have, because I think it can go in one of several directions. And then Rutger's just going to be a good player. That's who he is. He's a good player. He's been a good player at every level. He's strong on his stick. He's got the pro frame already. He's a super charismatic kid that coaches love. He's just one of those guys who's just going to be a solid NHL winger. I don't think he's going to have the sort of first line upside that Cole Perfetti has, for example. But I do believe he's going to be a really just a good, well-rounded scoring winger in the middle six there, and be kind of a 40, 50-point player and be a key contributor to a good team. So I've got a lot of respect and admiration for Rutger, and I don't know if you guys have ever had him on your show, but I'd put him right at the top of my Jets power rankings in terms of the quotability and the talking and the way he communicates. He's a pretty charming kid.
We certainly have had him on the program, and I can tell you that it didn't take long for Jets fans that tune into our program to fall in love with this kid. And we'll have to wait another year to get him here, but people are very excited about what he'll bring on the ice and off the ice, just as maybe a guy that can sort of usher in, even though be a rookie, a very young player. I mean, a new attitude around the team, and and he's really been a culture carrier every single team that he's been on, and I'm sure that's the hope here in Winnipeg.